June 23rd. I want to welcome everyone to this morning's committee hearing. I'm joined today by my friend and colleague Ed Reyes. At this juncture, we do not have a quorum, so Mr. City Attorney, we will proceed, and any action taken will be deemed to communicate from the chair. With that said, as I look around the room, I see a very diverse crowd. And I'm guessing that there are also you folks that have these little telephones that can do just about anything. I am requesting that somebody keep their eye on the USA-Algeria soccer match. It was 0-0 when I got out of the car, and you guys are laughing, but I'm serious. So if the U.S. scores, I definitely want to know, because we need to win, I think.
And that was that serious conversation we're having outside on the parking lot?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I really need to know. So whoever can do that with their phones, do that, please. Okay, we have some items that I believe we can, breeze through. About 6 of them, put them on the consent calendar. What we'll do, Madam CLA, why don't you start out by reading item 2?
Item 2, CRA report and resolution and CLA report relative to increasing expenditures from $200,000 to up to $375,000 for the construction of a public park on CRA-owned land located at 1015 South Wilton Place in the Wilshire Center, Koreatown Recovery Project area.
Okay, then we'll adopt the CLA report on item 2. That brings us to item 3.
CRA and CAO reports relative to a memorandum of understanding with the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power to provide funding up to $145,000 to jointly fund the Urban Land Institute Advisory Panel to review and study the Clean Tech Corridor.
Okay, on item 3, we'll adopt the CAO report. That brings us to item 4.
Item 4, LAHD and CAO report and resolution relative to the issuance of up to $10 million in tax-exempt multifamily mortgage revenue notes for the Toberman Village project located at 142 West Santa Cruz Street.
Okay, so on that item, we'll adopt the CAO report, and it says with recommendation 1?
That's correct.
Okay, that brings us to item 5.
Community Development Department report and CAO report relative to a $9.5 million city loan agreement to assist with the acquisition and rehabilitation of the Phoenix office project located at 6842 Van Nuys Boulevard.
Okay, we'll adopt the CAO report on that item. That brings us to item 6.
Okay. CDD report and resolution and CAO2 report relative to extending the maturity date of the Industrial Development Authority of the City of Los Angeles Variable Rate Demand Empowerment Zone Facility Tax-Exempt Revenue Bonds, Series 2001, funding Megatoys project as part of supplanting the confirming guarantee of state teachers' retirement system with a confirming letter of credit from the Federal Home Loan Bank.
Okay, we'll adopt the CAO report on that item, and I believe item 7 is a motion.
Yes. Motion Wesson LeBond relative to a commitment of $1.5 million from the CRA to the Wilshire Catalina Affordable Housing Project from the Wilshire Center Koreatown Recovery Redevelopment Project area.
Okay, then on that item, we'll adopt that motion. Mr. City Attorney, all of these actions will be deemed communication from the chair.
Mr. Chair, on number 3,
Reyes.
I do have a question on number 3.
Okay.
I went really fast.
Okay, no problem. On item 3, can we have staff come to the front? Mr. Reyes has a question on item 3. Mr. Reyes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, first, I think this is a very exciting opportunity that we are engaging ULI. But as you know, we've been working on different elements along the corridor. In my district, the northern end, we have the Royal Seco Specific Plan. We're working with entitlements. Other moving pieces include the creation of the Los Angeles River Corporation, and CRA has been tremendous in making sure that entity begins to move forward. In this study, how can I make sure that these elements are being considered as they go through this panel assembly and as they go through their analysis? Who would be the lead in making sure that we have that level of communication?
Trina Unziker, Office of the CAO. I imagine that could be communicated to CRA staff. I'm not sure if there's somebody here associated with that project, but I would recommend that the project manager discuss that with you.
Dave Riccatello with CRA. This is the ULI panel on the clean tech. The panel has already actually convened. They've already had their, they were here for a week, it was about 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
So they've given their preliminary report, and then we're waiting for their final report. As soon as that comes in, then our intent is to go to our board and then City Council with a briefing on the recommendations of the ULI panel and proposals for how we might implement those recommendations, both in the near term and long term. So our hope would be able to probably do that possibly in August, early September.
So the parameters of these studies were defined by whom?
They were done in conjunction with DWP and the mayor's office, and I believe we had discussions with CD14 and some of the members of your staff.
I was aware of it, but I was under the impression that we were still going to engage these different pieces and that was still going to be part of the analysis. Okay,
yeah, we had some discussions with some of your staff. In fact,
right.
In terms of putting together names that were of the individuals to be interviewed, that was done in cooperation with the council offices, the mayor's office.
So the roles of the River Foundation, the River Corporation, these are overlapping entities.
Correct.
And that's the question I wanted to ask, is to what extent were they folded in?
They were very involved in the process. They were part of the briefing, and they were part a lot of the material that was provided to the ULI panel in advance of their coming to LA included information on the river plan, the river authority, and their preliminary recommendations were very supportive of the river, the proposals for the river. In fact, came forward with recommendations on how to better access the river in the industrial zones.
Great.
So I can actually get you a copy. I have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation they did at their public presentation at the end of that week. I can get that over to your office so you can see it.
I'd like to get a copy of that. Thank you.
I can do that.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Is that it, Mr. Reyes? Okay, thank you. So as I was saying earlier, Mr. City Attorney, these items will be deemed to communicate from the chair until we have a quorum. Anne Marie, I think that brings us to item 1. If you could please read item 1.
Communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Ms. Jane Paul to the Green Retrofit Development Advisory Council for the term ending September 30th, 2011.
Okay, Ms. Paul, please come forward. I see you brought a friend with you.
I did. Good morning.
Good
Jane
morning.
Paul.
Morning.
Why don't you, if you would, tell us what, why you want to do this, what qualifies you to do this, and how excited you are about this opportunity.
Okay. I will start
And
by
it's
saying...
0-0 with about 9 minutes left, I think. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. I will start by saying I'm quite honored to be considered for this council. I have been working at the Green LA Coalition as the coordinator of green economy initiatives for about 3 years. And so I have been working on several projects related to green business, to green building, to environmentally preferable purchasing, but really focusing to a great extent on green jobs. And what we've done is we have functioned really as a facilitator to bring all of the different green jobs organizations, community-based organizations, education, community development, philanthropy, environmentalists, environmental justice organizations, economic justice organizations, all to work together on the green jobs efforts in Los Angeles. And what we found, of course, is that 2.5 or 3 years ago, no one knew who the other folks were. And so the process of building the partnerships and sharing resources and sharing information as things have changed so rapidly, has been very valuable to those organizations, and it's been very exciting for us. And I think really that the retrofit program is an opportunity to bring together the efforts to address both the economic crisis and the environmental crisis at the same time, to provide environmental benefits to our region at the same time as we're giving opportunities for folks to have good, safe jobs, family wages, safe working conditions, and career pipelines. So the advisory council is quite exciting, and the program is really hopefully a model for others, and also an opportunity to both address these crises and to have folks who are working on economic justice and environmental justice work hand in hand with the decision makers in City Hall.
Thank you. You know, after listening to your presentation, I'm up here struggling to try to come up with a question to ask you because you answered many of the questions that I would have asked. Mr. Reyes, I don't know if you have any questions.
Yeah. As we look at the efforts of Department of Water and Power, and we look at the land that the city controls, we look at the land that the state has jurisdiction over the county, especially along the Clean Tech Corridor. There's many remnant pieces of the railroad that, for many, they're small, almost insignificant pieces, but for the railroad, it's what they own, and yet they become barriers to creating the kind of vision that I think the River Master Plan was trying to bring to life. In this discussion and looking at green jobs, to what degree have you been able to work with city department heads and other decision makers in the bureaucracy to look at their land differently, where they could create jobs while maintaining, improving their facilities? Has that dialogue occurred, or do you see any significance in having that type of dialogue with the city government?
Oh, yeah, it's very important. And I know that in your office and in the Community Redevelopment Agency and in other council offices and the mayor's office, there's a great concern about building green manufacturing here, right? And building our industry and our manufacturing up again to provide revenue to the city, to provide economic stability to communities, to provide good jobs. And so I think looking at underused or underutilized or unused properties, both, in an industrial land retention kind of a program, and also to look at the municipal buildings, which this program is going to give us the opportunity to do, and see what's out there already in the built environment or what the potential is to have manufacturing. And I think that we can look really carefully at what micro enterprise, small, medium, and big business can offer the city. I think all of those are really important opportunities. Small businesses provide a lot of jobs. So I think it's great to look at the big parcels and the big properties and think about big manufacturing initiatives, electric vehicles, and those sorts of things. But I think it would be great also to look at what the opportunities are around small business and around job creation, and how those small business owners can really contribute also to our economic stability.
We have, and I've been saying this for quite some time now, and I'm trying to get some traction. I think we're finally pulling together a sense of focus, but let me give you an example. In the Lincoln Heights area, I have whole city blocks that are controlled by the city. 3/4 of those blocks are parking lot. They're just surface parking. And every department has their own surface parking. If you go there on any day of the week, maybe 20%, maybe 30% of surface parking is actually being used. So there's dead space there. Keeping my fingers crossed, the next 2 to 3 months, we will have re-entitled 400 acres of land in the northern part of the Clean Tech Corridor, 400 acres. We're going to quadruple its entitlement capacity. Now imagine if the city could create the type of orchestration where they can consolidate their parking, half block, 3/4 city blocks will become available under this new entitlement envelope for private investment. We can own the land, lease it out, and increase the size of our general fund pie, if you will, our general fund resources, because we activate the space that's sitting dead. My clock is ticking. This is my last term. So we've put all the pieces together to make that click. I think a group like yours, if the private sector can say, the council office is setting the table, let's sit at the table and look at the menu of what can be done and stimulate that level of investment. I'm hoping that in the retrofit, that we have the opportunity to have that kind of discussion, because we're literally there. And it's taking us some time to get there, but we just needed to have that pivotal moment in making it happen. So I look forward to working with you. I've heard great things about you. I appreciate your lending yourself to us in this capacity, and I hope to see some good things.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we've just been joined by Councilmember Perry, so we do have a quorum, and the U.S. just scored, and it's about 4 minutes or so left in the match, so it's 1-0, the U.S. So that's exciting. Anyway, and your appointment is exciting. I don't know, Ms. Perry, did you have a question? Okay, then without objection, we will forward your recommendation to the full council, and I think that's today.
Great.
Okay, it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Now, prior to your arrival, Ms. Perry, we dealt with items 2 through 7. Unless you have questions or concerns, we would... I'll reaffirm that, or? Yes, okay. So with that said, Mr. City Attorney, those items will be deemed approved by this committee. And that brings us to item number 8. If you could please read that.
CRA report and CAO and CLA reports relative to the fiscal year 2010-11 proposed budget.
Okay. If we could have the proper representatives come forward. And have you keep me apprised of how much time is left. Well, this is a first. The entourage is so big we had to pull up we're short a mic. Okay, who's going to start this off?
I'll be happy to. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think it would be great if you started.
Okay, be happy to. Trina Unzicker, Office of the CAO. The report before you gives an overview of the 2010-11 CRA budget. Funding for the budget totals approximately $586 million, and that's comprised of about $366 million in carryover funds from prior years and about $220 million in new resources. The proposed budget maintains staffing levels at 270 employees. A chart showing the overall budget changes from the current year to next year is shown on page 1 of the CLA-CAO report. The budget assumes a 10% cut to salaries and benefits, pending the outcome of employee relations negotiations relative to a retirement incentive program. Additional details are available throughout the report and its attachments. We recommend approval of the budget as submitted by the CRA and as amended by our report. We're also recommending other actions, including steps recommended by CRA to continue the Central Business District through its expiration in July of this year, providing instruction to the agency regarding carryover funds impacting next year's budget, a request that future agency budgets include a schedule showing costs for employee salaries and benefits. The CLA-CAO report also recommends several report backs from the agency. Those include the status of a lawsuit involving the city and LAUSD with potential impact on the city's receipt of AB 1290 funds, the impact of the agency budget should CRA be required to transfer additional funds to the state in future fiscal years, the land acquisition fund with the development status of all projects and associated closeout dates, additional information regarding grants awarded to the agency in the current year budget and the status of outstanding grant applications, a plan relative to repayment of a $10 million CDBG loan, and information regarding 11 redevelopment project areas scheduled to expire in the next 5 years. We recommend delaying approval of the Economic Development Opportunity Fund until the agency transmits specific information to the council for consideration. Similarly, we recommend delaying approval of the Industrial Incentive Program until the agency board of directors has acted on the program and transmitted the details of the program to the council. Finally, the balance of AB 1290 funds and related information is recommended as a report back to the council. Anne Marie Sauer with the CLA can provide additional details regarding these funds and some information regarding the Affordable Housing Trust funds.
Okay, just to follow up on what Trina said, in terms of the two new initiatives in the budget, those are the Economic Development Opportunity Fund and the Industrial Incentive Program. And the EDOF, as it's known, will respond to economic development opportunities that create quality, sustainable jobs in the redevelopment project areas. This program will assist new development that directly creates jobs, and the agency has indicated that they're going to do this by financing tenant improvements, capital equipment, public improvements directly related to immediate permanent job generation, and other eligible expenditures. The other new program, the Industrial Incentive Program, the IIP, is proposed to promote development of urban manufacturing, job creation, and greening of industrial businesses in the city, and particularly in RPAs, by providing grants to existing or new industrial businesses seeking to locate, expand, and or green their manufacturing operations. As Trina mentioned, we are recommending delaying approval of these two new programs until the board, till basically the agency reports to the council with the details of both programs. So once they've gone to the board for approval with the details, we would have them come back here. Although we are recommending that the funding be allocated. So the funds are set aside in the budget. We're just suggesting or recommending that they cannot allocate those funds or spend them until the council and the board approve the programs. With regard to AB 1290, I just wanted to point out that the city's 2010-11 adopted budget confirms that AB 1290 funds will continue to be retained by the agency for use in the council districts in which the funds are generated. And as Trina mentioned, we recommend that the agency be instructed to provide quarterly reports on AB 1290, and we have suggested that these reports include the balance of AB 1290 funds, including planned uses, commitments, and expenditures in each redevelopment project area and council district based on the percentage of acreage of the council districts comprising the redevelopment project areas. And as she mentioned, in terms of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, I just wanted to comment on that the total housing resources for 2010-11 are $121.2 million. That includes carryover of $88 million and new resources of $33.3 million. So that's the total allocation in the agency budget. And then specifically in terms of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, there's $5.5 million in new resources for the housing NOFA out of the $33 million in the new housing resources in the agency budget. And to date, so since 2003 when the trust fund was established, $52.8 million is what the agency has contributed to the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Okay, let me jump in real quick and announce that we've been joined by Council Member Tony Cardenas. With that said, Ms. Essel.
You don't have the score update?
Oh, it's over.
It's over, we won?
It's over, we won.
1-0.
1-0. They sure.
Good. You're in a better mood now?
So does this guarantee advancement? Okay, that's what I thought.
Does it guarantee our budget moving forward?
No, that doesn't.
Yeah. You could
No
only
such
be
luck,
so
huh?
lucky. But good for USA.
Yay. So this is, I'm 6 weeks old. I'm in my 6th week now. And
6 weeks old, is that what?
And at first I felt sorry for myself that I was going through the budget process this early, but it has been a great part of my learning curve here and a great learning experience, and I want to compliment the CIO and CLA for doing such a good job and a thorough job in analyzing our budget in a very fair manner. So with that said, it's become all the more clear to me that we have our work cut out for us with the resource challenges that we're going to face this year, next year, and potentially in the next 4 or 5 years as we lose our other project areas and look at property tax reassessments. We're going to have to rethink how we operate at the agency at many levels and adjust to the new realities. So that really is the chore of the top management to deal with that. We don't know yet if the ERIP will play out or if we'll have to go to layoffs. We're hopeful that the ERIP will work.
And what number do you need to hit in order for the ERIP to work?
Well, we have targeted $6.4 million as the 20% reduction over 2 years. So the number of employees that would impact is, we're guessing around 60 right now. If you figure roughly 6 figures per 100,000 per person with benefits in the equation. So that's going to be a huge challenge. We're at 263 right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge challenge for everyone, period. But if you've got to reduce the staffing level by about 63, then we're going to be, Mr. Cardenas, you know we're going to be hit by the state. So, and I don't have a clue how much that's going to be. Has anybody factored in what approach they might take to clip us this year, and at what amount?
Speaker Perez has been saying he's not going to let that happen, and he was on the commission, so we're taking his word for it. Now, I'm sure that there will be an effort again, and I hope it can be contained.
That will be interesting. I forgot that, John. That would be interesting.
I mean, that's a side note. We are concerned that, our lobbyists in Sacramento they are concerned that they'll come after redevelopment again. It's a fairly easy target. We need to make our case that we are providing an economic benefit to the bottom line at the state and city level. I mean, certainly in Los Angeles, that's what we want to be focusing on in the coming years, that we are creating jobs, that we're bringing sales tax revenue back, that we're bringing business license revenue into the city, in addition to building up the property taxes that we eventually turn back over to the city. So that I would hope that the Redevelopment Association can help make that case in Sacramento as well. There's a bill right now that Assemblymember Fuentes has that is directly related to economic development and through redevelopment and agencies, and if that should pass, I think that helps empower that argument that we're helping to rebuild the economy. And if you take the resources away from the agency, you lose that ability.
How much did they take last night?
$71 million is what we wrote as the check on May 10th, and we'll write another $14 million roughly on May 10th of next year.
Well, I think that the approach that you're taking to try to save us is the right approach. I just think at the end of the day, you have so many elected or legislators from all over that have different desires and what have you, and I think that we're still very exposed. And if I had to bet, I would bet that they would take something, because the speaker, when you're the speaker, you're not usually, I mean, you've got 79 other people to, plus 40 senators and a governor to deal with.
What do you know?
Yeah.
Just a comment real quickly, Councilman. And we did note in our report that the budget proposals at this point, in terms of the governor, the speakers, and the speaker pro tem, do not include redevelopment funds, but obviously we realize that could change, and so we would obviously work with the agency and monitor that.
Well, that's good. Then we have a fighting chance then. We have a fighting chance. So the key is being able to make an argument that makes sense, and hopefully with the association, with Speaker Perez's knowledge of the day-to-day operation of the agencies throughout the state and their values. So that's we have a fighting chance. But the thing that concerns me the most, and this is about every city department, agency, or whatever, is our inability to deliver services, our inability to get our work done, because the workforce is, decreasing significantly. How will you get the work done? Because you've got 4 of us here today, and there's another 11, and I don't know how many of us. Let's say, so you're going to have 10 of us just saying, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need this. So how are you going to give us what we need so that we can give it to our constituents?
We have begun a process to analyze the core services in each of the departments and regions of the redevelopment agency. So as we boil that down and try to prioritize activities, we'll certainly work with you on that. I think we can accomplish a lot by streamlining our business practices at the agency. I've always heard that and known that back in the 90s, and it hasn't gotten a lot smoother in terms of just how we process purchase orders and contracts and signature authorities. So we're taking a segment of our time and focusing in on how to allow everybody to do their job without as much sort of hands-on care. So that, of course, doesn't always accomplish everything. We will have to make some tough choices, I assume. We're working on a list of priority projects with the regions, and we want to know what it is that the council members view as priorities, what can we put additional pressure on to expedite, because it does create jobs, because if it got online sooner, it would be a benefit to the economy. So we're going to focus in on creating SWAT teams if we need to pressure and push forward on projects. And look for creative solutions to any of those that might be possible. So we do have ideas in mind. We have a lot of work to do. Each day is a new learning experience for me. It's a lot like peeling the layers back of an onion when you try to figure out, how the agency does operate. And I can understand why its budget is so confusing. It's probably the most confusing in the city, but we have multiple layers of activities going on that carry over into future years from prior years, and we look for other resources and bring them to bear. We hope, in fact, to at least match what the state has taken from us in resources from other pots of money, whether it's a Prop 1C, or it's a Neighborhood Stabilization Program monies, or it's federal ERA monies, or it's grant monies from foundations, and see how well we can leverage those funds as well.
Well, the agency has taken a lot of hits, some deserved, some not deserved, and I know that there are probably several members of the council that are excited about your leadership and Mr. Hollis, and that we might have a shot at credibility and transparency, and so at least I'm one of those believers. And I know that, I'll just say this to my colleagues, we had two big projects, one of which has been approved and construction has started, one of which may be in council even today, which is like a $95 million project on Crenshaw Boulevard. And what your staff did in CDD and with 63 less people, I don't know if I could have gotten that done. So I do have some concerns, again, about us not being able to deliver services. With that, I think Mr. Reyes and Ms. Perry, and then Mr. Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the total number of employees are 263. Did I hear you correctly? 63.
270 authorized positions, but only 263 are filled.
I see. And based on what happens with EREP, 63.
Well, I think they're targeting around 60 right now. It'll depend a bit on the salary levels of the people that take the ERIP.
So we really don't know where the holes will exist until we go through the process.
It's going to be a work in progress. We hope to know sooner than later, assuming that the ERIP moves forward, which individuals plan to take it, so we can begin to plan earlier and not have everybody vacate the premises on November 30th or December 31st. So we hope to stage it in a way that helps us restabilize.
Right. Because some of the individuals have cultivated relationships and dialogue with community leaders, and that doesn't happen overnight, so it's going to be tough.
Well, I was on the commission in the 90s, and we had the real estate recession, which caused our revenues to drop dramatically, and we went from 300 employees to 187 in that period of time.
I do have one question specifically, and it's referring to the Industrial Incentive Program, the IIP. There is a effort, and the question really is about proposing to use $200,000 in general revenue funds for an outside consultant to develop and refine the program guidelines. Amongst other things, and also understand that the grants for developments or projects are proposed to be provided by the redevelopment project areas. My question really is about the assurance that the grants will go only to the projects in the respective redevelopment project areas. How do we establish that assurance?
Cal's a bit more of an expert in this.
Okay. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Are you a soccer fan?
I'm sorry?
Are you a soccer fan?
I am a soccer fan. I
Okay, well.
went back on vacation on a ship, and the whole crew has spent the time watching soccer.
Okay. You should have stayed home, huh?
With regard to the industrial incentive program, this program is modeled after our successful commercial rehabilitation programs, and the idea of the program is to provide relatively small loans and grants to businesses as opposed to property owners, where that investment of dollars, if either in loans or in grants, will immediately create new jobs. The only businesses that can be eligible are businesses that are within redevelopment project areas. Each project area will, and the regional administrators within those project areas will have the ability to participate in the program and will fund the program for their project area in a way that's consistent with their overall work program. So we may have some projects that invest heavily in this program. We may have other project areas where industrial development may not be a high priority, and they may invest little in the program. But the whole idea is to make it very simple for the applicant, make it very streamlined, that if all the rules are followed, then these grants can be offered in an administrative manner in the same way that our commercial rehabilitation program works, so that it doesn't take 6 months from the time an applicant comes to us to the time they can actually start creating jobs. That's the idea behind the program, and we're going to provide you with complete detail as has been recommended by the CAOC-CLA.
So the fact that the nature of the funds are emerging from the CRA in of itself restricts it to the project areas.
That is correct.
But that is understood? Is that written in some document? Is that just the way the law works?
It's actually the way the law works. We have to spend this is the sources for these funds are the project area's tax increment, and the tax increment has to be spent within the project area for these kinds of projects. So if you'd like to see it written as part of the guidelines, we can certainly say that, but the law will require that. But we'll be happy to make it an explicit part of the guidelines.
Okay. I just needed to raise it because in reading the report, that's not specified. It's understood, but it's not specified. Thank you.
Okay, before Ms. Perry, Cal, you made me think of something when you talked about being on a fishing trip. Just as a side note, I'm telling you, coming in this morning, I was listening to sports radio. There's this big fishing tournament in North Carolina. And this one boat team, caught a marlin that weighed over 900 pounds, so they would win. The prize was $1 million. One of the qualifications was that every member of your crew had to have a $15 fishing license. One guy on the boat with the 900 did not. And so they had to disqualify that. And the next biggest fish wasn't even 600 pounds. And so that crew won the $1 million. So hopefully this guy is still alive. And
We'll get a license.
he's been placed somewhere with security. But I mean, you made me think about that. I mean, that's just terrible. $15 license. Anyway, Ms. Perry.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. A couple of things, and I am pleased that the CLA-CAO report also had reservations about establishing new programs, the Industrial Incentive Program, the Economic Development Opportunity Fund. The only point on which I disagree, and Mr. Chair, if you could break this point out so I can explicitly vote no on it, is I don't want to vote to allocate the funds at this time until we have a report that enables us to be able to approve the establishment of those reports.
Okay, so how would you like for us to do that? Split it in?
Let's ask the CAO how the report is written, because I guess one of the recommendations in there is to allocate the funds at this time.
We have two recommendations that address delaying approval, so we can probably just change those to disapprove at this time until they come back. Because that's what you don't want to approve any part of it, right?
Well, you would recommend delaying approval of the programs, which I actually agree with. But what I want to make sure that I explicitly put on the record is that I don't want to vote to allocate the funds for programs we haven't approved yet at this time. So I don't know whether it makes more sense to break that one out. 'Cause I don't know if everybody agrees with me anyway.
Well, you know what, we could just, that's not that problematic to just separate that issue, is it? Can we do it that way? Because I do want to, I would like to accommodate.
Oh, right. Trina has a good point. Okay, it would impact the overall budget allocation, so we probably need to amend recommendation number 1, and then 4 and 5 are the two that address the program. But I think we all understand the instruction that if that's the direction
how do I need
you
to
go.
vote to be able to vote against allocating the money at this time?
Then you would probably, it may be a situation with like the city budget where we would need to vote on the specific recommendations, and for example, on 4 and 5, rather than delaying approval, you're basically saying don't approve it at all, delay the whole thing, not even allocating the money.
Okay, then why don't we do this? Why don't we get a huddle with some of the staff, and see how, technically how we have to do this, and then Ms. Perry can continue with her questioning, and then Mr. Cardenas is up, and hopefully by the time we finish the questioning, we'll have it sorted out so that we can accommodate Ms. Perry's request.
Great. Now, the other questions I have, the budget proposes a major reorganization of staff, including the addition of another chief operating officer of economic development and real estate. I wanted to know the rationale behind the reorganization and how that would help the redevelopment agency operate more efficiently.
And in part, I know we talked about this during my confirmation hearing, but I'm all the more convinced it's the right thing to do. There was one chief operating officer at the agency, and under that operating officer were all plan amendments and new project areas, all technical services and policy issues, all regional administration, all capital finance and real estate activities, all economic development activities. And it was one large funnel and one person in charge. And I have to say, I think part of the reason that the agency didn't have a lot of specific direction and leadership for a while was because that there was all of that work was organized under one person. I saw the opportunity to have Cal Hollis work on what he brings his strengths to and his expertise, and have Glenn Wasserman work on what he brings his strengths and expertise to. So Cal has taken on the pieces that have all to do with the regions. He's an expert at negotiating deals and on transactional activities, and I certainly would be lost without him in that position. He handles all of the economic provisions of the deals, and our economic development strategy we'll be working closely together on. Glenn, who's got a real estate background, a redevelopment background, as a lawyer, will bring that to bear in his position. In fact, he ends up writing a lot of the documents that the city attorney reviews. He's handling all the plan amendments, adoptions. He's handling the OPAs and DDAs. He's handling housing and technical services and the strategic plan. So it's a nice division of a huge amount of responsibility. And for me, that allows me to get the points of view of both Cal and Glenn and Steve, who runs our financial and administrative operations. It's in any organization that I've ever worked in, you wouldn't have all of the operational functions under one head. You would break it up into what makes sense. So having 3 direct reports is very helpful to me as opposed to just 2.
So the proposed budget also considers adding 5 positions to the executive office while reducing technical positions. So tell me the rationale behind this and how it actually helps in terms of getting projects delivered.
That's an error. The 5 positions is really only 2 positions. The other 3 belong back down in technical services, but it is the direct trade-off. There's no added bodies whatsoever in this plan as a result of this reorg. The 2 positions that went into the CEO's office, the executive office grouping, are Cal and an assistant, who had been down in the real estate operations area. So Cal continues to manage the real estate operations without adding staff.
I'm also concerned the CRA is relying on the early retirement incentive program to reduce salary costs by 10%. And this may be a question for the CAO. How many people at the CRA actually are going to qualify for ERIP?
It's over 100.
I'm being told they're still negotiating, so.
Well, here, I think we've got an answer.
Well, let's get a couple of answers, because I'd like to get some objective analysis.
My understanding from our Employee Relations Division is they're still in negotiations with the agency on the specifics of a retirement incentive program. So at this point, I don't have a number. I can tell you, I know we've included a report back on a monthly basis, because obviously if they can't meet this $4 million cut in the 2010-11 fiscal year, we need to know where those savings will come from. But Steve.
Councilmember Steve Valenzuela, there are approximately 120 individuals at the CRA who are eligible we're under a CalPERS retirement system, and the package that's being proposed to be offered to these employees would be the 2 years additional service credit that we have in our existing contract with CalPERS to allow employees to retire with that incentive. In addition to that, we are negotiating with the AFSCME, the 4 bargaining units that are AFSCME represented, an enhanced benefit package that very much mirrors the city's enhanced early retirement incentive package that was offered to city employees last year. And based on the direction from EERC, the negotiations that are currently underway would require that all retirement costs be paid for by the employees, none of those costs be borne by the agency as the employer. And so the enhanced retirement incentive package that we are negotiating would be available to those employees who meet the CalPERS retirement criteria, and as an additional filter would have at least 15 years of agency service. And so when we attach that second criteria, there are 106 employees who would be eligible for the enhanced retirement incentive program that's currently being negotiated. So the bargaining units that we're discussing believe that there's a very high probability that the package would be accepted by as many as 60 of the 106 eligible employees. So we think that the numbers that are being discussed in terms of hitting the $6.4 million in savings, which is 20%, the 20% goal, are attainable.
Now, the CAO, can we answer that question as well, because it was first posed to your office?
Right. And Errol Griffin from the CAO's Employees Relations Division has been part of the negotiating team that have been working with our staff on this. I don't think he's here, but.
I have one more question.
No, it's fine. I'm just trying to get you your objective.
Yeah, and if they're not ready today, I'm willing to wait till they're ready.
Yes, the negotiations are, Madeline Rackley with the CAO, the negotiations are still taking place, so I don't think we're ready yet to comment on that, but Mr. Valenzuela accurately represented what is being negotiated, so, and that we have the same information.
Okay, thank you.
Last question is, CRA didn't include in this year's budget how they will repay the city approximately $14 million in community development block grant funds. Get an answer on that, or CAO follow up for us.
Councilmember Steve Valenzuela again. So there was a report back when the council approved our carryover amendment on the potential repayment of $4.7 million in what are called 20-year CDBG loans that would be due from the agency in September of this year. We provided a report back a couple of weeks ago that, and those findings are included in the CLA-CAO's report.
That was 4.7?
4.7.
I said 14 million, so what about the rest?
There's an additional request for a report back in the CLA-CAO's report that we report back within 2 weeks on the potential repayment of a $10 million 20-year CDBG loan that's actually due next year, And so we're in the process of preparing, we're happy to prepare that report, and we'll be reporting back on, so it's a total of the 4.7 plus the 10 million.
So we'll get that in 2 weeks from today?
Yes.
Roughly? Okay, so that may be our next meeting?
Okay, before I turn it over to Mr. Cardenas, did we figure out how we would need to vote on this?
Yes, we did. We would need to amend the CLA-CAO recommendation number 1. Rather than the agency budget totaling $586.3 million, the number would be 581.9.
Okay, so why don't we amend it to deal with that, and that should handle, or should afford you the opportunity to do what you need to do. So,
Whatever the group's comfortable. I'm willing to vote no on that part. I don't care.
well, but still,
Yeah.
if we can do it this way, let's just amend it. We'll do it that way. Okay, not seeing no objection. Then, Mr. Cardenas.
Okay, thank you. You have a category of staff that is basically being eliminated. Can you please explain? The only way I can figure that's happening is you're shifting responsibilities to other authorities. Under technical support, you have resource development. It shows that you had over the previous 2 years and the current year 4, 3, and 4 positions, and you're going down to 0. That's under technical support. Category is the resource development. It's on your sheet, your summary sheet.
That function is in fact those responsibilities were transferred to our internal audit and compliance division. And so with respect to the functions that the resource development department performed in the past, which related to 2 primary areas. One, new resource identification, that is grant procurement. Those functions are now being performed by our capital finance unit. We've hired about a year and a half ago an outstanding employee who has been very successful in helping to coordinate the capture of over $50 million in grant awards in FY10, which have leveraged an additional $50 million of outside funding, which are going towards our efforts to diversify our revenues, which are now almost exclusively reliant on tax increment. The other functions of the Resource Development Department were grant administration and grant compliance, and they included both federal grants like CDBG and other grants, Caltrans, MTA, and those types of activities. Those functions have been transferred, and the staff have been transferred to our internal audit division. So the important activities that unit performed are being performed in other areas of the organization.
So, and then as you mentioned that, when it comes to the audits and compliance, you increased it by 3 positions there.
Correct.
So it is a true shift.
Yes.
And then also when it comes to administrative services, you have 5 additional positions. Who wants to answer the question as to why we have an increase of 5 additional positions? I know that this goes into part of what Ms. Perry's question was when it came to administrative services. But we have a new director. Obviously, you're either came here with some ideas already, or you're taking the advice of the people who've been here longer than you about why you need 5 positions shifted into administration.
I do believe that happened before.
Right, and let me just make one comment about this, and it has to do with one of the important objectives that Ms. Cecil pointed out in terms of both putting resources and focus on helping to move forward important economic development projects in each of the regions, and as well to provide the necessary internal infrastructure to be able to deliver those services if we have to issue contracts or purchase orders or transfer monies. And so if you look at the footnote, Council Member, you'll see that, and I believe that the majority of these positions, that these 5 positions were in our contracts and purchasing unit, which is an area of the organization. Right. So we've added additional capacity to our contracts and purchasing department in order to help expedite the issuance of important contracts and purchase orders and transfers of monies. And we also added one additional position last year to hire a maintenance facilities director. The agency owns property that it holds for future redevelopment activities, and those vacant parcels, we want to make sure that they don't, that they remain well-maintained, that they're fenced, that they're secure, that they're not contributing to blighting conditions in the project areas in which they're located. And so in order to provide the necessary oversight and address potential liability issues, we hired a maintenance director. We had not had a maintenance director for, the last leadership position in that department was a maintenance manager that when that person retired several years ago, we did not backfill that position. And increasingly, we found that that was creating potential liability issues for us. So we hired an outstanding professional who came from the Linwood School District who had extensive experience in facilities management. He's done an outstanding job. And so that position, together with the additional positions that we added in contracts and purchasing, represent, I think, if not all, majority of the 5 positions that you see on the chart.
Okay. When it comes to how does this new organizational chart and the positions, how does it translate into more on-the-ground activity when it comes to projects? Because that's been one of the biggest problems in my area, is
that was the
that
purpose of
you
it.
actually have property owners, you actually have people who want to invest in the community, and some of them, it's like oil and water. They just want to stay away from city agencies. They say, I'd rather just do it on my own or not do anything at all, which means if that's an attitude of an owner, if that's an attitude of an owner in a CRA area, that's the exact opposite of the environment that we're trying to create, correct?
Correct.
Where we supposedly are trying to create an environment where people want to invest in these areas, and then we give them incentives, not only monetary incentives, we give them incentives that make them feel like they're getting the kind of attention necessary so they can meet their benchmarks of timelines, et cetera, because in the real world, time is money. So how does this organizational chart lend itself to a better environment?
Were you heading towards the mic?
Well, let me, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Cardenas, let me speak to at least my portion of that organizational chart and how I understand my charge. In my previous position as deputy COO, I was an advisor to the CEO and to the COO and helped develop the economic development strategies within the organization. What I've been asked to do in this position is to provide direct assistance to the regions on an as-needed basis, as well as to have an understanding as to what each of the regions are doing and help coordinate our activities among the regions. An example I would give would be the project Councilman Wesson mentioned, both the District Square and the Midtown Crossing projects. I was asked to become personally involved in both those projects to help the regional staff move those projects along. And we brought other resources from within the organization to those 2 projects. They had to be done in a timely manner, and I believe we were successful. The Real Estate Economic Group, which continues to report to me, is a group of individuals who are very talented and can be brought to bear anywhere within the agency on any project at any point in time, in addition to their broader agency-wide responsibilities. We're trying to organize ourselves in such a way that when a region needs additional resources, primarily human resources, we have a place that we can tap in and bring those resources, whether it's my personal time or whether it's the time within our real estate and economic development group or it's our capital finance group. We will bring them to those projects on an as needed basis. And I've been asked to coordinate all those efforts and to be very involved with each of the regions to help them implement the council objectives for those projects. We have to sort of break down some of the silos that have been there and be able to bring the resources of the agency to bear when it is necessary, despite these sort of regional boundaries. And that's what under Chris's leadership, that's what we are trying to accomplish through this reorganization.
And Mr. Carnes, just let me jump in and say, because it did work in my area, and if everything goes right with the second project, I mean, I marvel at it. That will be over $250 million in development in my district within a year. So, and it would not have happened if they hadn't have put the proper people in to tie up all of the loose ends, and so the people in my district will be the beneficiaries of it. So I did want to say in that instance, it did in fact work.
But the thing is, you're the chairman of the committee. Why wouldn't they want to give you that kind of attention?
I would think they'd want to do that for every member of the council.
Since I'm not a chairman of the committee, I would hope. Right.
I would hope they would
You're
want
on
to do
this
that.
committee, that's important.
You know, but
If I could follow up, when there wasn't a top-level focus on specifically what you're speaking to, there was no ability to coordinate the actions the way that Cal has described. And to have someone in his position be able to have hands-on time with projects is sort of a new development. There was just too much going on that wasn't coordinated well at the top level. In addition, part of the problem, and we spoke about it takes 150 days to make something happen, the internal processes that I spoke to earlier need to be reviewed and altered dramatically over the course of the next year. It's much easier said than done, I'm finding out. You don't just go in and wave a magic wand and have a new system show up and have contracts and purchase orders pop out at a moment's notice. But that is going to be a big focus we must be looking at in the interim, is how do we make things happen faster when it takes 6 months to get paid if you're a consultant, or if it takes a year to pull a contract together, or 8 months to do a purchase order. This is not acceptable in an agency that should be responsive and nimble.
sure, but Chris, you're giving examples, sad examples of real life experiences that people have had with city agencies, and in some cases specifically CRA.
Correct.
You're saying that it's unacceptable. I don't think if we put that to a vote, I think you get a unanimous vote that it's unacceptable. But my question is, how is this staffing plan going to reduce the 6 months down to 6 weeks? How is it going to reduce when somebody literally came to the CRA and then was lamenting to my office that they sat down with a really nice guy, and I agree that the guy at the CRA is a nice guy, when he told them honestly, well, to get your application before the board, it's going to take about 150 days. And he's sitting there saying, my application's done. I'm ready for you to review it and to see it and tell me whether or not you think it's good enough to receive CRA support. 150 days is ridiculous. Out in the real world, forget it. They'd rather not deal with the CRA. The worst part about that, out in the real world, if they came to CRA, it's probably for a reason. They needed that gap financing. They needed that support. So, and then if they realize that they can't meet their timelines and it throws them completely off, what happens all too often, we have projects that don't get past the thought process. They don't actually get done, which is, again, the whole reason why CRA is here. Instead of allowing communities to look dilapidated, for communities not to have job growth, for communities not to have economic stimulus and development, the CRA's mandate is that your job is to go ahead and be the conduit, be the catalyst, make the difference. But when things like that happen, Chris, that just happened a few months ago, and I shared that with you. And again, the person who said it, I'm not mad at that person. I'm upset at the department that they have to allow their people to go ahead and tell the truth of 150 days just for the board to go ahead and consider the item. And that the crux of that was, apparently he said, well, you know, we have to hire a consultant to review your package. For God's sakes, wouldn't you normally have a pool of those consultants so you can just pull them off the shelf after they're already qualified, and assign them to that package, and then within a couple of weeks or so, after they kick the tires and check it out and review it and highlight it or what have you, then they report to the CRA staff and say, this is our third-party opinion about this package. 150 days?
Well, that's one of the areas we're looking at is our RFP process.
But Chris, please don't say looking at. I'm a politician. I know the difference between looking at, we're going to make this happen, here's the document that proves to you that this is the way we're going to handle business. Looking at is just a way of saying, we're going to try.
Mm-hmm. I didn't come to this agency to try.
No, I didn't get elected to try
put myself
either,
out of the
but
public
yet I
sector
have
here
to deal
and
with,
try.
I have to deal with people who want to invest 5, 10, 15, 20, 50, 60, $100 million into one project, and they're sitting there laughing at me saying, why did you mention CRA, Councilman? I'm going to try to do it without them. Why do you mention the housing department? I'm going to try to do it without them. And guess what? If I can't fill those gaps, I'm not going to do the project. Those are my conversations with developers in my area.
Well, I came to the agency with a commitment to make that change. Otherwise, it's not worth my time for doing this. That's why I am here. So I don't want to use words that would lead you to believe that I'm just being political about it. I'm actually there, and what I wake up to every morning is how do I make this agency more functional? What is missing here?
But you're not going to do it by yourself.
No, I'm not.
And that's the reason why I'm asking that question, is you've got 270 positions slated to go forward in the next budget year.
And we'll be down to 205 by some point soon.
As the retirement and you don't backfill those positions, et cetera. So I'm not so much interested in the number of bodies. I'm interested in knowing how those bodies are going to contribute to the CRA being an agency overall. As the chairman just mentioned, there are wonderful experiences with the CRA. It's not all bad. But what we need to understand is, if we have holes in our department or any part of our system here in the city where one particular person can ask an honest question to meet an honest objective, and then they turn around and say, forget it, I don't want to deal with them on my project. That's the only thing that person sees. Whether it's happening in the 9th district or my district or any district, that's the only project that that person sees. So my question to you is, do you feel comfortable that this matrix of the bodies and the shifting and titles and things of that nature, that is going to do the job better tomorrow than we did yesterday?
Yes, I do. It allows 3 executives now that can focus fully on their areas and implementing that kind of progress within their areas. When it was one big pool of people under one operating officer, that wasn't feasible. This wasn't feasible. Now each of those executives will have their own set of objectives that they'll implement, and I think that's essential. And that gives me the room, instead of me being in the middle of deal making and a lot of other specifics of the agency, to keep a focus on the reforms that we're looking at implementing so that the agency can move more swiftly. I mean, part of it has to do with audit responses, and now we have a whole bunch of procedures in place as a result of a 2004 audit. We had to add 18 bodies to accommodate the CHIC audit of 2004. I mean, there are things that happen in government that cause it to work more slowly than you'd like it to. But I'm going to find every possible way in which we can move things forward with more alacrity.
I wish you well, and
thank you.
I know you're determined. But I have a question about the EDOF fund, the $4.2 million fund. Who can answer some questions about that? Where did that idea come from? What is it? Is it a remanifestation of something we tried 5 years ago and it worked well and then we're back to it? Or is it something new? And how did we come up with 4.2 million? Why not 6.2? Why not 3.2? What's the magic about 4.2?
I'll try to answer those questions. The big idea behind that fund is to create a pot of money at the beginning of the budget year that is not allocated to any specific project, so that it is available anywhere within the agency. It is meant for those projects that are ready to go, but for a gap. Projects that can generate employment quickly. This is not money to be used to go buy land and 4 or 5 years from now we'll have a project. This is a project that maybe it's a project we've been working on and just haven't been able to find the dollars for the last piece to make it work. It may be a brand new opportunity. A business comes to town and says, look, we need to be up and running in 12 months. We need a $500,000 capital improvement loan. We have a pot of money that we can go to for that purpose. Use of that money will go through the same procedures, the same board and council approval process as any other project. This isn't shortcutting any oversight. It's merely identifying a pot of money controlled by the CEO, if you will, to allocate the projects on an as-needed basis that meet a set of criteria. And we're going to provide to you a full set of that criteria so you can see how we'd be evaluating projects. Why $4.2 million? I wish it was $20.2 million. The reason it's $4.2 million is that because we want to be able to use this money anywhere within the project area, it needs to be general revenue. It cannot be tax increment dollars. So we looked at the general revenue that we had. We allocated some of that general revenue to those project areas that do not have sufficient resources for day-to-day operations. We allocated some of those general revenues back to the project areas from which they came in the form of interest earnings that have been generated. Those interest earnings now stay within those project areas. We took that out of the general revenue category. We funded about $200,000 for setup costs for the industrial incentive program, and we funded a plant adoption process in the Northeast. We got done, we had $4.2 million left. I said, that's what we got left. Let's put it into that fund and use it for that purpose.
Okay, two comments on that is, it sounds a lot like what ARA funding is for. Sounds exactly what ARA funding is for. Job creation now. So why we're allocating $4.2 million without coupling it with ARA funding projects or what have you to fill those gaps, I'm not sure. But it is what it is. But my way of tracking that and the place where I'm coming from, because when I got on this committee a few years ago, there was a fund, and I said on the record that sounds like a central LA, South LA project fund. And sure enough, by the time all those monies were used, I think it was like $11, $12, $13 million, 8 out of 10 of those projects went to those areas. Congratulations to those areas. But it came like this $4.2 million came from. It came from the general pot, which meant that it could have been used everywhere in the city, and then 90% of that money ended up in certain areas outside of my area. And I warned myself, and I told everybody that was going to happen, and it did happen. So what I want from the department is I want you to tell me right now if there's anything that precludes your department from sending an email to Macaria in my office every time somebody inquires on that $4.2 million, and for you to send an email tracking as to whether or not you're going to make a recommendation that some of that $4.2 million be used for X or Y or Z project in the city.
There was nothing that would preclude us from sending information to all the council offices about projects that are being proposed.
You can send it to all of them. I'm talking about my office.
I understand. And we like to disseminate information broadly, so that, no, there's nothing that would keep us when a project area submitted a request for those dollars. That's when we would know about it. Mm-hmm. It would be nothing that would keep us from advising council members that this is a project that's been proposed for these dollars. There's nothing that would keep us from doing it.
Because it puts us all in a very funny position. If there's a project in Jan Perry's district and they've already gone through the process and jumped through the hoops, et cetera, by the time I see it, mm-hmm. I'm not going to go ahead and say that $3.7 million can't go to a project in Jan Perry's district. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to do that. It puts me in a position where, it's all or nothing. Because then Jan Perry has every right to say, Councilman of the 6th District, what's the problem here? Mm-hmm. This project is going. It's got this money, that money, and this money is really critical. Why are you getting in the way? Mm-hmm. And with all due respect, it's legit. The only thing is, from my vantage point, it's disproportional. That's the problem that I have. Every time I see any department put together this special fund or that special fund, and the description of it is appropriate, creating jobs now, that's motherhood and apple pie. And throw soccer on top of it. It really gets people excited. It's all good. But it puts somebody like me in an awkward position where I'm sitting there in the valley and I'm saying, there we go again, 8 out of $10 special fund dollars don't go to the valley. And we have as much need as anybody else when it comes to creating jobs.
Yes, and
Not as much poor people, categorically as poor as anybody in the city. You were going to say?
I was just saying, we would welcome certainly projects in the valley. In my opinion, it's my opinion, what I did not think was productive is to take that $4 million, divide it by 12, and have a little pot of money in each of the little projects that creates no jobs. So, and I understand it creates an issue for the council that they need to make a determination whether a particular project proposed for this general revenue funding is of sufficient value to the district and the community at large, that those monies should be spent in that way. I don't know another way to do it other than just dividing it by 12 and putting it out there and not creating the kind of impact that I think the council would like to see.
I'm not recommending that.
Thank you.
I owned a business, happen to be in real estate, and I understand that having little pittance of $100,000 here and there is not the same as having $1 million here and there, $4 million, et cetera. It's a world of difference. One is not equal to the other, and they are two different worlds. One report back, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be done with my questions. I would like a matrix and a report in simple English that delineates and shows us where exactly all the interest income generated within all the accounts of the department, where they're generated from, where that money has been utilized in the past 3 years, for the 5 years for those funds, and footnotes on the requirements and or flexibility or not of the interest generated from each one of those accounts. Okay, how long would it take for you to get that to us?
Councilmember, I think we could get that to you within 2 weeks.
2 weeks? Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Perry, I think has a closing
Yeah,
question.
just to close. And again, maybe this is to the CLA. I wanted to also vote no on the reorganization proposal that adds a position of another chief operating officer of economic development and real estate. So can we break it out so I can vote no on that one too?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, so how do we move forward?
So it would be 3 votes, as I understand it, Ms. Perry?
Well, is that 2 votes? That's what
Okay, break it into two categories?
I think it is.
The majority report and then bifurcating those 2 elements?
Is it as simple as that?
Well, is it possible to just vote on each recommendation, so you individually?
Okay.
Okay, then let's, then I guess,
But if we're really looking at 2 isolated, can't we just group the rest of them as one vote?
that's what I had hoped.
Whatever's easiest.
Yeah.
You want me to vote no on?
There you go.
Yeah, just let me know first.
Then make a motion on that item, and then we'll
Okay.
vote on it, and
All
then,
right, is that okay with you?
Yes.
All right, I want to make a motion to vote no on the addition of another chief operating officer of economic development and real estate, and I also would like to vote no on allocating funds for programs that have not yet been established, specifically the Industrial Incentive Program and the Economic Development Opportunity Fund.
Okay, now does she need a second? Because I'll give her a courtesy second. I won't vote for it. But
Okay, and then there won't be a committee recommendation on those 2 items.
I understand. I understand. We lost Mr. Reyes.
I'll give a courtesy second to her 2 motions.
Okay. All right,
So can we
so,
vote on those first?
yes, so let's vote on her 2 motions first.
So my vote should be an aye vote, and then you should vote
That
against
does,
my
yeah.
vote. All right, so my vote.
In
is
line
an
with
aye.
you as an aye vote. not in line with that motion is a no vote, correct?
So we have two,
Because as she stated as,
Right, so make it clear as to what there's a committee recommendation on, so we'll have a majority recommendation on those items, and then the items for which there would only be, no committee recommendation.
so basically what that winds up with is on Ms. Perry's motion, it's one aye, on each of them, it's one aye and two noes.
Is that correct?
Two noes or one no
Yeah.
and two ayes?
because she stated it as, her statement was to not support.
Right.
So I'm voting,
You're voting no on those two items, and the other two gentlemen will vote yes on them.
Yes. Okay,
so I'm a no vote on that.
and then
There you
we're,
go. That's easy.
we're aye, so now that's out of the way. Can we vote now on the main? Help me now, help me. Can we vote on the main issue as amended by,
CLA.
Sorry. Sharon's asking if we can just amend, but what we have in front, just basically the recommendations here.
I want to be very clear what I'm looking for on those items, so I don't want to
no, I,
do it as an amendment.
okay.
I'll just vote.
And we could just do, probably just like a majority and a minority report. A minority report would just contain the information that you clearly wanted to vote no on, and then the majority would just contain the recommendations that you agree, that the whole committee agrees on. But we'll make it work, because
That's fine.
Okay,
As long
so-
as it's clear.
no, it's done. It's done.
No,
It's just a matter of logistics and how to get the committee reports to reflect exactly what the full committee wants to do on the different recommendations.
So you're going to have two reports, and technically one won't be there won't be a minority report or a majority report. There'll be just two reports, right?
Probably it will work out the logistics so
Okay.
that the problematic recommendations will be
So
bifurcated.
as it's agendized on the city council, that will be noted, so if somebody wanted to go forward, as Ms. Perry did on the floor, they could do so, and the language will already be there.
Exactly. We'll work it out.
Okay. Mr. City Attorney, then I believe that's it. Anna Marie, there's no more business before this committee. This committee is adjourned.